The solemnity of the most holy body and blood of Christ we celebrate today. Corpus Christi, a more familiar name. Corpus Christi is Latin for the body of Christ. It's the greatest gift that God could have ever given us, his own body and blood in the Eucharist. And we celebrate it today for two reasons, to remember the two reasons why we have the Eucharist. But first of all, the Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ. It's not like it, it's not a symbol of it. It still looks like bread and still tastes like bread and wine, but it is not. We use the word transubstantiation. This very substance of the bread and wine is changed into the actual body and blood of Christ. It's a mystery. We proclaim it a mystery at every Mass. But Jesus has told us that this truly is his body and blood when we celebrate it at the Mass. Body and blood, soul and divinity. If you receive only the host, you receive the full body of Christ and the full blood of Christ. If you drink only from the chalice, you receive the whole Jesus. They're not separated. And the Eucharist is present in our tabernacle. He becomes flesh on the altar, and we reserve him in the tabernacle for two reasons. One, so that we can come and adore and worship him here, and many people do every day. And secondly, so that we can take him, the Eucharist, to the sick. We preserve it to take to the sick. But there's another important aspect of the Feast of Corpus Christi, the body of Christ. We are called the body of Christ, his church. Every single one of us, St. Paul reminds us, is a member of his body. We are all living parts of the body of Christ. And that's a reality that's even more important. Why do we have the Eucharist? And why does it become the body and blood of Christ? So that it can become our body and blood. When we receive the Holy Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ flows through our bodies and our souls, and we become the body of Christ. And we're called to take the body of Christ out into the world, to be a real presence of Christ to others. It's a tall order. But when you think about it, today all over the world, people are celebrating the Mass. In every country of the world, the Mass is being celebrated today. People of every nationality and race and origin and all together we are the body of Christ. And that body of Christ is here to be a light to the world. And the Lord needs us to be that light. And so today we ask the Lord to help us to see him in others. Many people come to me in need every day. And the first thing I think of is this is Christ. No matter who they are, it's Christ coming in need. In my ability to help them, I always do whatever I can. And I think all of us run into the same situation. When people come to us who are hurting in any way, a relative, a friend, a neighbor, maybe just to talk, whatever it might be, it's Christ coming to us because we are all the body of Christ. It's a tremendous, tremendous reality. Jesus wanted to find a way to be with everyone until the end of time, and what a great way he did it in the Holy Eucharist. So today we thank God for the gift of the Eucharist and ask him to help us to see him in others. When we look around in our society, the body of Christ is suffering in many ways. When we look at the immigrant crisis that we're going through now, I read this week that 7,000 children were separated from their parents because their parents were deported to another country, their country of origin. And the government could keep track of almost all of them, but for 1,500 of them, they don't even know where those children are. That's happening in our nation. The body of Christ is suffering. And we should pray that we get a just resolution to that situation. All people need Christ. All people are Christ. We can look around and see that Mass is being celebrated today in prisons. It's being celebrated in hospitals. It's being celebrated in cathedrals. It's being celebrated in all the parish churches around the world. It's a great reality. Jesus just enters into our lives everywhere in the world through the Holy Eucharist. So today we ask the Lord to help us to to see him everywhere, to do what we can to be the Eucharist to others.